What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one we are discussing the wildcard for game week 31. Those of you that have still got the chip left, you're probably wondering, should you use it this week? Is it better to save it? What would the draft even look like? This video is going to cover it all. So if you do enjoy it, give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. We're going to start off with the advantages, okay? Now in FPL there's usually like blocks of time or maybe periods of game weeks where specific players just look better because maybe they got a bunch of double game weeks, maybe they play in blanks, etc. So recently we've had like Wolves, Villa players, Arsenal players, maybe Leeds like Rafinha as well, and obviously some players that have just played in game week 30 like Spurs, for example, who also had a double game week in 29 as well. You might want to remove some of that deadwood. I'm not saying all those players are deadwood, like Arsenal and Spurs probably not, but those of you that are stacked up on Wolves players, Villa players, these are all players that you probably want to get rid of because they don't even play in game week 30, they're just not very good, or they just don't have great fixtures, right? So you can get rid of all those players. People with only one free transfer going into game week 31 probably have all those players and just can't deal with them all at once. It's not necessarily an issue, but with the wildcard you can kind of reset, right? You can also target Chelsea, Man City and Liverpool. So Man City almost like forgotten about a little bit just because they didn't have any doubles. They didn't play in game week 30 or anything like that. So people even sold Cancelo, right? Season keeper Cancelo was sold. A lot of people have only got 2 Liverpool players. Some people have got no Chelsea players. You can deal with all these things at once with a wildcard. You can get in all the great players. You can remove all the deadwood. Happy days. You just potentially, hopefully, smash the rest of the season. Depending on whether you've got the free hit in 33, you could also just avoid game week 33 players completely, so you're not worried about how you get Man United players in, how you get Newcastle players in, whatever it might be, because you can just free hit them in. There's also potential, I wouldn't say it's guaranteed, but there is potential to maximise points because you're using the wildcard a bit earlier. So you've got a bigger period of game weeks to kind of cover with one wildcard. So people, for example, like me, the wildcard in game week 26, we were trying to cover 26, 27, 28, 29 and 30. That's 5 game weeks. You might still be better off using it later, like game week 34, but potentially, depending on how bad of a state your team is, it might be worth doing it now. Like I said, having that reset of players and also putting yourself into a good position for after game week 33 when there's going to be even more doubles, right? Because that's all there is this season. It's just double game weeks. And obviously you can get ahead of the crowd. A lot of us might want to remove the deadwood. A lot of us might want to bring in players from those teams and just basically restructure our squads. But without the wild card, it takes more transfers or more hits to do that. So you hopefully do get ahead a little bit of the crowd with your wild card. The question then comes, why would you wait? Why would you not use it this week? I'm going to show you in a minute my team, just quickly, but I would say most Game Week 31 teams, because of Spurs playing in Game Week 30, because Arsenal are doing well at the moment, most teams probably look okay for Game Week 31. So whether or not a wildcard gets you a huge amount more points than just waiting is up for debate. And I'm not sure most teams would see a huge advantage necessarily this week unless specific players did really well, like Chelsea players, maybe if you got Mount, Reece James, I don't know, Foden, Cancelo, all these players that other people without wildcards are probably not going to have all at once. I would also question, like, one of the reasons, again, like I've just said, to wildcard is to kind of load up on all these teams, especially like the big 3, like I said in yesterday's video, Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool. But the fact that Man City and Liverpool play each other in game week 32, it doesn't completely cancel them out, right? It doesn't make those players bad options, but I would say it makes them worse than if they had a good fixture, of course, right? You'd expect, if I own Trent, and if I bring Cancelo in, or if I get Robertson as well, I'm expecting their clean sheets to go in game week 32. So arguably, you could look to load up on those players a little bit later, and obviously, doing it later gives you more information, because right now, what we know is who's doubling in 33, who's blanking in 33, and then we know which other fixtures there are to rearrange. But we don't know specifically 100% which game weeks those fixtures will go. So by holding your wild card, you can just completely nail that at the end of the season. Whereas people like me without the wild card, we are just hoping that it all falls into place, right? The other option is you can dead end into game week 33. If you've not heard that expression before from an FPL point of view, it basically means just making your transfers to absolutely maximise points for just a couple of more game weeks, and then not worrying what your team looks like after game week 33 because you're going to wild card anyway. So, I don't know, transfer this week could be a Chelsea player. Game week 32, it could be another Chelsea player. Game week 33, you either free hit or you just transfer in a bunch of game week 33 double game weekers. And then it doesn't matter what that team looks like, what it does in that week, because you'll definitely wildcard in game week 34 and just try and obviously make the most of the rest of the season, knowing when the doubles are, hopefully by then, knowing when the doubles are happening in 36 and 37. And again, not to kind of try and worry everyone, there will be a big double game week in 36. We just don't necessarily know every single double that will go in there. Right, some of them could go into 37. There could be other doubles as well in other smaller game weeks as well. Obviously, you nail the final part of the season. Because of what happened in the FA Cup, the likes of Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool are going to double later on. There might be something big that happens where, you know, we've loaded up on James, Cancelo, Robertson, and actually it's worthwhile going for other players. I don't know. Let's say Jota, Firmino get injured. Diaz looks absolutely nailed on. Suddenly he's an option. There's a bunch of other problems as well. That could help you really, and obviously the big teams you would expect to score more points as well. So you could hopefully try and nail that later on. And obviously it's closer to the bench boost as well. For those of you that want to bench boost in game week 36, it could be handy just wildcarding a little bit later. So I don't think there's a right or wrong here. I've got to be honest, after kind of looking through and researching for this video, I would be tempted if my team looked good to put it off until game week 34. Just to kind of show you why. This is my team. Now, I'm not wildcarding, okay? And I do have 2 free transfers, so I am in a pretty good position for this week. This team is with 1 hit. So this is 1 hit for game week 31. I don't know if this is definitely what I'll do, but this is potentially what I could do. And I would say that team looks pretty good. What's missing? A Man City defender, maybe a Man City midfielder like Foden, maybe someone like Mason Mount. And obviously I haven't got Weghorst or anything like that, but I don't think people are going to be that concerned about that. I would say that team looks pretty good for game week 31. Does that need a wild card? I would argue probably not. And Rafinha, yes, if you're on wild card, you wouldn't keep him. But Southampton at home, Watford away, next 2 fixtures, we're talking about dead ending. You keep him in your team. You get rid of him for 33 for Barnes or Maddison. They double in 33, and then you wildcard into whatever team you want. So I think that team looks okay. And then if we take it on to game week 32, again, still playing the 4-5-1. Whether I'd actually play that, I don't know. But you've obviously got Liverpool playing against Man City. So the fact now I haven't got my 3rd Liverpool player, I haven't got Cancelo, I haven't got Foden, I would say is less of a worry for this game week. It's after this game week, or after game week 33, I'd be really worried about not owning them. Again, Rafinha's got Watford, I just said that. Spurs have got Villa away, which isn't bad. I can bench Doherty because my defence is double Chelsea against Southampton. Tierney at home to Brighton, which is probably better than Doherty away to Villa. Saka and Lacazette are still in there left over. Again, if you wildcarded, you probably wouldn't have necessarily triple Arsenal. You probably wouldn't have Lacazette necessarily, but I think that team looks okay. And then obviously I worry about 33. If you've got the free hit, maybe you use it then, and then you wildcard out of it. So this is going to be very team dependent. I don't think most teams are going to look much worse than mine, even if you've got 1 free transfer, enough where the wild card is needed. The problem is the wild card's never needed, because you're always going to I always say this, you're always going to manage your team to try and be the best it can be for that game week, the next game week, etc. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to move from like a completely awful team to suddenly a wild card team. It can just be a bunch of small changes. But I do think there's reasons why you might want to save it till game week 34. I'm going to sit on the fence a bit because I'm not 100% certain on that. But I think if your team looks okay and you're not sure, you could hold on to the chip. If you want to use it this week, let's look at the draft. All right, we'll do a little bit of tinkering with this draft because it's not just a case of you pick this and that's done, because there's a lot of things to consider. I tried to keep this roughly in my budget. You might have more team value than me, because I would absolutely prefer to, instead of Brownhill, have a slightly better midfielder. If you could stretch to Martinelli, maybe someone like that, or even just go into like Gordon, maybe at Everton could be an option. Same with Cucho. If you could go up a little bit in price from him to like Pukki maybe, or Mateta at Crystal Palace, they could be options as well. Same with White to Doherty, okay? But I tried to keep it in my budget. The other way to get a bit more money in this team would be to play maybe a 4-5-1 or something like that, or a 3-5-2, whatever, 4-4-2, something, where instead of Kane, you have a cheaper forward, and then you have Son in midfield instead, right? So you'd probably play with like a 5 in midfield, like I said, 4-5-1, 3-5-2, something like that. a lot of this also depends on whether you're free hitting in game week 33. So I'm not going to go through this week by week, but with this team, because you're targeting the likes of Liverpool, City, Chelsea in there as well, when you get to game week 33, you got Nick Pope with a double, Saka with a double, Barnes and Weghorst with doubles as well, and White too. I would say you've got 5 double game weekers, because Dubravka doesn't matter because you've already got Pope as well. I mean, you could play Dubravka instead if you wanted to, but whatever. You've still got 5 players, and Brownhill doesn't count. So you might want more than that. If you are free hitting in 33, then it doesn't matter, because obviously, whatever. You just bring in the players you want, and then you stick with this team afterwards. And if we just go through a few more game weeks, right? This is game week 34, for example. So Man City have got Watford. The likes of kind of Chelsea still have pretty good fixtures. Kane's got Brentford. It still looks pretty good. The bench is weak though, so if you need to bench boost, you'd probably have to cheapen out a few players, probably in defence, I would say. But as you keep going through, this is game week 35, for example, game week 36, it still looks pretty good, okay? And obviously you've got transfers in between anyway. So let's go back to game week 31. If you weren't free hitting in game week 33, so you needed to manage it a little bit better, and you wanted a bit more money, for example, then you could take out one of the defenders and just play 3 at the back most weeks, and then just upgrade maybe your midfielder or your forward. So like Rudiger down to, I don't know, someone like Dan Burn, for example. You wouldn't obviously want to play him this week, but you would have 1.5 in the bank. So you could change Brownhill to Martinelli, for example. Maybe even, if you had a bit more money, you could maybe go Madison instead. And obviously this all relies on players being fit, etc. You could do something like that. 3-5-2 is probably okay. Double Chelsea defence, not necessarily essential, though it does look pretty good. And then when you get to game week 33, you've obviously got that extra doubler in Martinelli. You've also got the extra doubler in Dan Burn as well. The only thing is, you then have to decide who to bench for him. And you'd have to bench one of James, Trent or Cancelo, probably, unless you wanted to bench like Mason Mount maybe. But that is one of the issues with having that player. And this is what I was saying on yesterday's video. Free hit 33 on paper sounds pretty good. But on your normal team, like if you had this team, would you really want to bench Cancelo, Trent or James for someone like Dan Burn? Probably not. But this would, and also you got White on the bench as well. So you would have to bench one of these, I think. I don't know who I would choose, mate. I'm not going to spend ages on this video worrying about it. Let's just bench James for now. It's a tricky one. But you could then potentially have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 double game weekers. And your single game week players are Kane, Salah, Cancelo, Trent. So it ain't that bad. So there's a few different ways you can go. I don't want to reset from this game week because that will probably just change the whole team. But that's a rough kind of draft of what I'd go for. I think Weghorst is worth going for just because the fixtures are pretty good for the rest of the season. You got that Norwich game in 32. You got the double in 33. You've obviously got the extra fixture in 31, even though it's not ideal. Wolves, Watford, Villa, Newcastle to come. They've still got one more game to rearrange. I probably would go for him. I probably would have Kane over Son if I could afford it. Salah would definitely be in. Trent would be in. I think Reece James and Cancelo would definitely be in. A lot of people are going to struggle to get to that kind of defence straight away. I think Saka is still a pretty good option. They are doubling in 33, but they do have another game to rearrange. So they will have another double game week at some point during the season. He's nailed on. He's going to start every single game, I would imagine, unless he's not fit. But even against Villa in game week 30, right, Arteta was saying that he's kind of shattered. They still played him, right? And he's got a bit of a break now. Hopefully he doesn't play too much for England, etc. But I think that looks pretty good. Whether or not you go with Barnes really depends. Because if you're free hitting in 33... then do you really want him for Man United away? I mean, it's an okay fixture, but it's not amazing. But again, they've got really, really nice fixtures to end the season, like Everton, Villa, Everton again, Watford, Southampton. It's pretty decent for Leicester. So I think I would just want him in there anyway. So that's roughly, I think, what my draft would look like. Again, you could go back to how I started here. Brownhill there. And then instead of Burn having the second Chelsea defender, which to be honest might just be better, it just makes you weaker in game week 33. So you're going to have to decide whether you're free hitting. But I think I'd go for something like that. But again, if I can just come back to, my team, like your team might be completely different. You might need the wild card. But if I compare this to what I'm now saying I would wildcard into. It ain't that much different, right? Kane instead of Son, Barnes instead of Rafinha. I think Rafinha is better for the next 2 game weeks anyway. Mason Mount is pretty decent. Having the double Chelsea defence is good with Cancelo. But again, I come back to that kind of same thing that, okay, I don't have Cancelo in this team, and he is probably better than Doherty, of course. But Doherty has Newcastle, then Villa. Cancelo's got to play Liverpool in game week 32, so that is a bit more difficult. So I don't know. I really don't think game week 31 wildcard is a bad idea. But I do think there's a lot of reasons to hold it until game week 34. I think just knowing those doubles, being able to get exactly the big hitters that you want. It might be the case that going for triple Man City is the play, that getting Foden in as well as Laporte and Cancelo is the play, instead of having double Chelsea defence. There's just a lot that can change. And you're still, by the way, going to target 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. It's still 5 game weeks. It's a lot of time to make a lot of points up on your wild card, when a lot of us right now are scrambling just to kind of fix 31, get through 32, try and get through 33, and then we still only have 3 transfers for the rest of the season. So, yeah, let me know below. Are you using it this week, or are you thinking of using it in game week 34? I think there's a lot of reasons to save, but it's going to depend on how your team is looking. Let me know in the comments below when you're wildcarding, what your draft is looking like. If you did enjoy that, give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.